Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
All right, let's take a look at what's happening in the tropics. It is very active, even in areas where we don't necessarily have tropical cyclones in the process of forming. Now, there are still some questions that will need to be answered in the next couple of days, especially as we head down into the Caribbean. We're looking at what was an upper trough this morning. However, that upper trough is forecast to move westward across the Caribbean in the next 2 days or so. And as it's moving west, it is forecast to weaken considerably. As that's happening, a much larger area of higher pressure is supposed to develop right here over the north central Caribbean. So we'll be watching this carefully. The fact that we do have a tropical wave moving underneath that upper trough right now means that the convection has increased. Several processes going on right now that would increase the rising air motion and hence some of the thunderstorms in the tropical air. It's just that when you have an upper trough sitting over the top of a tropical wave down below, you just don't get the cyclone genesis, the formation of the tropical depression, the storm. It's tough for the convection to actually solidify or organize in a very cohesive manner. So that's what we're seeing now, a widespread canopy of cloud cover due to the convection, but not exactly organized for the most part. If this upper trough indeed gets out of the way, an upper ridge builds overhead, and we still have an existing tropical wave underneath, well then perhaps, at least in terms of theory and probability, then we could see something a little bit more interesting. So we'll watch it carefully in the next day or so. There's also another upper trough over the Bahamas, but one thing that certainly changed in the last 2 days is the amount of cloud debris and convection with this upper low really dropped off compared to yesterday especially. And here in the Western Gulf, again, lots of clouds, but not a lot of organization down at the surface level. In the upper levels, we do have an area of low pressure that is pushing off towards the west. And east of the islands still have that flow ripping across the lower latitudes, so these waves that move through that kind of environment tend to get ripped apart substantially. Here's a closer view. Florida, Cuba, upper low here. Some showers and storms, not organized. Pressures at the surface, relatively speaking, still on the high side, not dropping significantly. And this upper low with its assortment of cloud debris, storms, and rain generally pushing west, but at a very, very slow rate. Some heavy rain as a result of that system over southeastern Texas and adjacent communities in northernmost Mexico. All right, now we head south into the Caribbean. This is South America. You can see the flare-up of convection here. This is hard to pick out, but actually the islands are sitting under all of this, so moderate to heavy rain with gusty winds. Winds could easily gust over 40 miles an hour within some of these thunderstorm zones, and you get the sense here, again, of this upper trough with the twisting motion going on here in the cloud field over the eastern Caribbean. But we don't see anything significant developing as we go through the nighttime and into tomorrow morning, but we are watching for the potential of some kind of change in the upper air pattern over the Caribbean. Certainly we'll let you know if indeed that appears to be happening as we go into the new week. Big cluster storms here coming off West Africa. Lots of cloud cover here, not organized. We have a couple of days anyway to observe it as it tracks west. There's the center of our hurricane, Nora, northwest at 12, and you notice 125 mile an hour sustained. So we're talking a Category 3 on the Sanford-Simpson. Oh, back in 95, Roxanne, if you remember, on the Yucatan Peninsula, that was a Category 3 hurricane. And we don't have it here, but the estimated pressure down to about 952 millibars. We are getting wind gusts now out of the southeast of about 35 to almost 40 miles an hour at Cabo San Lucas on the tip of the Baja. These are the warnings. Hurricane warnings still in effect from Socorro Island. And then as you head west to the adjacent islands, also a hurricane warning in effect. And from Cabo Corrientes southeast along the Mexican coast to Punta Maldonado, we do have a coastal flood warning in effect. Here's the big picture. Here's the tip of the Baja. Here's the center of circulation. Here is the coastline. And as you can see, lots of rising air motion here. Getting up onto the hurricane top is what you're looking at here. And we do have bands of rain emanating or coming out from that. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at it for you if we could. And we'll show you the coastline of Mexico here around Jalisco. Okay, I guess we don't have it, but right here around Colima State and Jalisco, we could see some heavier rain bands pushing in tonight. We are looking carefully here to the north because an upper trough is pushing a little farther south. It's this upper trough which is supposed to start pulling in the approaching hurricane and then steer it off to the northeast. So folks who certainly live across the south tip of the Baja need to be especially careful. You want to monitor the progress of this particular hurricane, as it could bring quite a bit of wind and lots of water your way.
The Atlantic, we have been covering more in the Pacific than the Atlantic because we've seen more action in the Eastern Pacific and even in the Westpac. And we'll start it off with the Eastern Pacific. Hurricane Nora, as of 8 o'clock Pacific time from the National Hurricane Center, 18.0 north, 110.2 west. And that puts it just southeast of Socorro Island, which is this little dot right here. And the winds there have been clocked as high as 53 miles an hour in gusts earlier this evening. Sustained winds around the center of Hurricane Nora at 125 miles an hour. So it is a Category 3 hurricane. This is a very dangerous storm, and it's still moving northwest at 12, but as we'll explain in a moment, we think it may start to turn more to the north, and because of that, we may have watches and warnings going up on parts of the Baja of California sometime on Monday. The estimated pressure now is down to 952 millibars. We do not expect any significant change in the strength of Nora as far as the sustained winds over the next day or so. It is over very warm Pacific water. Water temperatures above that critical of 80 degrees. Also, the wind environment aloft is very light. There's not a lot of wind shear, so that's favorable for Nora to maintain its intensity. As far as warnings go, there are no warnings or watches along the Mexican coast, but for Socorro Island and for Revilla Gigedo Islands, that is where we have the hurricane warnings tonight. Again, not affecting a whole lot of humanity. But again, we may have some warnings issued here tomorrow if you're watching on the satellite dishes from Cabo San Lucas. This is something that bears watching because most of the models the Hurricane Center uses in Miami are projecting a turn towards the north over the next couple of days. Now, with the hurricane off the coast continuing to churn up the water, we're getting the swell propagating on shore, much like we saw in Southern California, remember, with Linda a week or so ago. But now we're dealing with the high swell from Cabo Corrientes down to Punta Maldonado. This is along the Mexican coast, including Acapulco. Very strong swell moving on shore, crashing on shore, and no doubt higher than normal tides. And some of the rain bands may get in tonight, but again, we're not overly concerned about some of these outer bands coming on shore and causing some problems. Now remember, there are a lot of mountains here along the Mexican coast and just inland, the Sierra Madre del Sur, the Sierra Mountains of the south, down in this area. Some of the mountaintops, 8,000 to 9,000 feet easily, so any rain would cause possible mudslides and flash flooding. But again, you can see the brighter cloud tops off the coast. And when you see the dark red, that's where we have the coldest cloud tops, the deepest convection, the strongest showers and storms. And you can see this latest picture, they're wrapped from the southern part of the storm up across the the east side into the northern part of the storm. And there's that very distinct eye with Hurricane Nora. And there is the Baja of California continuing now to move off to the northwest, but again, we expect to turn to the north. The reason being, we have a trough indicated by this darker area, this drier air, working south, and this would tend to force Hurricane Nora more back towards the west in time. And we'll have to wait and see what happens, but at least at this point, that is our forecast. So if you're watching, again, anywhere from the Baja of California or the Mexican coast, stay with the Weather Channel. Some of this rainfall later in the week, if it does make that move, could have a real impact on the southwestern United States. Back here in the Atlantic, not a whole lot of action. We still have this disturbed area in the Bay of Campeche in the Gulf. Trough here, not favorable for development, but causing a flare-up of showers and storms recently in the Bahamas. And we have this wave moving from the islands into the eastern Caribbean, interacting with another trough. Again, the upper winds are not favorable right now, but they could become more favorable if ridging takes place, and we'll watch it for you. Again, a plane may go out and look at this tomorrow. Right now, it's hard to find a circulation. Pressure is running around 1,012 millibars, but that onshore flow bringing plenty of rainfall into the Gulf Coast of Texas around Houston. That wave has moved through the islands, interacting with the upper trough, but still a lot of clouds over the Lesser Antilles, the Windward and Leeward Islands. Here's a wave here. Again, you can see the high-level clouds right here. See how quickly they're moving. That's wind shear, so we don't think this one's going anywhere anytime soon. And as far as the Cape Verde season, it's basically over with at this point. But WeatherScope is not. What's coming up, Christina?
Well, a system bringing heavy rain moves through the southwest as more wet weather in the forecast. We'll have the latest update coming up on WeatherScope after your local forecast. Stay with us.
I need the Hinky file faxed to the home office and get me 20 copies for the board meeting. think you can handle that?
Yes, sir.
Need to impress your boss?
Think you can handle that?
Use Microprint 1 from Georgia Pacific.
Do you think you can handle that?
Think you can handle that?